Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Silmarillion Film Project. After a reasonably long hiatus, we are returning. Having given the month of April a miss, we have returned in May. No longer able to put off the grim day when we discuss episode 13, the season finale of season 7. Let the tears flow this evening as we come to the end of the Near Ninth Arnaudiad. I am Corey Olson, the Tolkien professor, joined as always by my two my two co-hosts here, whose names I'm going to get right this time, Marie Prosser and Nick Palazzo. Nick, you were the author of the script for this episode, right?
Yes. I had a lot of help from the script team on editing this one. Again, this was another episode where I had no illusions that anyone was going to have no notes for me,
Right.
because almost as much as the episode with the Return to Mandos. But this one was equally as well imagined in people's minds. Everybody has their own internal adaptation of this section of the Silmarillion.
And as you know, really the second huge, the sort of the final movements anyway of the second huge battle sequence that we've had. I mean, we've had other battles besides the Bragalach and the Near Ninth, but those are the two that we've had like multiple episodes and stuff going on multiple fronts. So as I was reading it, I was just like, this is a Nick episode. You can tell this is a Nick episode. And it was also like, I think it possibly set a record for SilmFilm's script with smallest percentage of dialogue.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think that has to far and away have set the, because again, so much of it is description of stuff happening. Basically,
I mean, although the Dagger Bragalach, the second Dagger Bragalach, no, the first Dagger Bragalach episode, I think may have had ultimately less dialogue. As far as a percentage of the total runtime. Yeah.
But it was good. Well, we will get to the details here in a minute. Before we get too much further, quick announcements. I would like to folks. So we have one more regional moot of the season, Mountain Moot, at the end of this month on May 31st, out in Denver, Colorado. Delighted to get back to Denver, and that will be the end of our spring season of regional moots. But the big announcement is Myth Moot 12. We finally, after infinite labor, have gotten registration open for Myth Moot 12. It's been like, fighting upstream against a charging horde of orcs, but we have gotten it done. And registration is open, and the lodging link is also available as part of registration. That was like a second flanking action that we had to take against the charging orcs. But we have everything in place now. June 19th to 22nd in Leesburg, Virginia. Really looking forward to Myth Moot 12 as always, but wanted to just encourage people, if you've never been able to come to Myth Moot before, you totally should join us, because it's going to be delightful. All right. We do have, as you can see, we have several of our fall moots also already open for registration. Cascade Moot in Vancouver on September 6th, New England Moot on October 18th, and Euro Moot on the 3rd through 5th of October in Cardiff, Wales. Our first 3-day Europe event that is happening in the beginning of October. It was funny. Have you guys ever heard the Silmarillion opera, or the Lord of the Rings opera, which is the new one, like the full opera adaptation of Silmarillion?
I know it exists. I haven't listened to it.
It's really something. I mean, even just the sheer quantity of music and the adaptation, and they're finishing the Lord of the Rings now. It's really cool. Anyway, I was at Westmouth this past weekend, the Tolkien Society conference, and Paul Godfrey, the composer of the opera, was there. So he and I were sitting in the airport after our arrival. We arrived on the same plane, and I was sitting talking with him about stuff, and I was telling him about. I was like, "Oh yeah, we're doing a Euromoot in the fall," and he's like, "Oh, where?" And I said, "Cardiff," and he's like, "Oh, I live in Cardiff." I was like, "Oh," and he's like, "When is it?" I said, "It's the weekend of October 5th. He's like, "Oh, that's my 75th birthday." I was like, "Oh, okay." How about that? So anyway, yeah, there we go. Well, the Welsh Opera Company. So anyway, yeah, we're gonna we may have Paul Godfrey from the Opera Company at Euromood. Anyway, let us not put off the evil day any further. Not that talking about the script is evil, but like, this is the saddest script. As you know, Maria's bragging on this slide. We kill off 10 named characters in this script. So that's got to be a record for any episode. I mean, we've had several die before, but
Yeah.
this has got to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've had 2 or 3 characters who had already been established die in a single episode before.
Mhm.
And we've had scenes where a lot of people die on screen.
Yeah.
But the closest we would have come to this would be like the death of Barahir's band, where we knew the names of multiple characters and we'd been with them for a few episodes and then they all die. Like, but not all of those guys had lines. So even though it was more than 10 characters, there wasn't 10 named characters the way this is.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. This is something
I had to
else.
pull out my scythe for this one for sure.
And I have to admit that I love more than ever our Balrog rule.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it actually gave me chills when you describe when you describe the Balrogs marching out onto the field. Like, the sense of doom that we have invested that with now is really intense by this time, because we've been holding to that rule. And for people who are new to SilmFilm Project, the rule is anytime a Balrog comes forth into battle, a named character dies.
Yeah.
Like, we passed that rule a long time ago. And it's been since at least season 4 that we passed that rule, maybe season 3. And
season 3 for sure.
Season 3, yeah,
because that's when Feanor's killed by Balrog.
Right, from the death of Feanor.
3.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's now like sufficiently well established, even like, you know, like in my, just reading it in the script, it was awesome. And you know, in a like grim and horrible kind of way. All right, so let's get to it. So now we have Nick, do you want to go through the maps first? Or how do we want to kind of break this down?
We certainly can, if we want to give a sense of where everybody is when the things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where it should not be like where people are on the what people are doing on the battlefield should not be the most important part of the story that you're telling.
Right.
But you also still have to get that right.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, and I will say, you know, Nick, I know how much you sort of think about these things and this element of it. And I was thinking throughout reading the chapter, I was marveling at how little confused I was. Like, there wasn't any time when I was reading when I was like, I need a map. Like, I can't figure out who's where and what's going on. In part because, I mean, the the flow and the sort of the establishment of the different kind of groupings was clear and consistent. Even frankly, even the way that the episode opens with Hurin and Huor, who are of course cavalry, right? With them like sort of coming up to a high point on the field and looking out over the field to figure out where to go next, right?
Yes.
Which gives us a great moment first of Hurin and Huor talking to each other, right? To establish that, because the relationship of Hurin and Huor really ends up being almost a kind of not exactly a frame, but like a strong through line through the whole episode. So that's good. Like that establishes that already. But then the exposition of like, from here we can see where everyone is and remind the viewers. So over here we have them, and over there we have those. That worked really, really well. Like I was not.
It's interesting because it's kind of like, it's a little bit like the map scene, the infamous map scene in the Peter Jackson films.
Right. Yes.
But the battle is unfolding in real time while they're talking about it, and we're seeing it. So it makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Anyway, so that worked really. So from that point on, it was really easy to follow, and the parts, it's not. Most of it actually I could picture pretty clearly. But even when I didn't have a very clear picture in my head, it didn't matter. Like there wasn't at any point where I was like, wait, who's where again and what's going on? So anyway, that was really, really good. But having said that, because not everybody listening will have read it, let's do the maps. Let's go. You can walk us through the maps as a way to just kind of give an overview of the flow of the action, so that as we're referring to particular scenes and events later on, everybody can follow what's going on. So,
and we also have the maps of episode 12 as well, because I had made them up for episode 12, but we didn't get a chance to go through them. The interesting thing is that in the book, as you know, Maedhros never
gets there
Fingon's side, right? However, in episode 12, we have Maedhros making contact with Fingon. Now, once that had happened, now I had a bit of a problem on my hands, because now I have to extricate Maedhros from there in order for him to do his job in the rest of the battle.
Yes.
Right. Because it would be unusual for Maedhros. Maedhros would have to leave his guys to go over and talk to Fingon and then come back.
Right.
In a situation like that, like armies don't generally just kind of like pass through each other, even if they're friendly.
Right.
So anyway, so what we're looking at,
and let's face it, would even Fingon's army be really comfortable with the Feanorians passing through them on the battlefield? I mean, I'm just saying. Yeah, you're right.
The issue isn't Fingon's army. It's Turgon's
army,
which is also there.
Yes.
Because the three characters who all speak to each other in that scene, it's Maedhros, Fingon, and Turgon.
Yes.
All three of them are in one place for a moment.
Right.
Presumably behind their armies, having a quick conference.
Yeah.
Because, yes, as you say, you don't really want to pile all the armies up in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is from the beginning of episode 12, aka the end of episode 11. No, the end of episode 11. So this is not the beginning of episode 12. This is like the final third of episode 12 when they actually get to the battle.
Because this is so Gwyndor has charged in.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This is
Gwyndor has charged in, and then the gates open and the orcs come charging out.
Yeah.
Right. So Gwyndor's charge is at the end of 11, and then in episode 12 we step back in time.
Right.
But if you've got the Eastern Front on the battlefield already, we are about 3/4 of the way through episode 12.
Okay. Yeah. So And episode 11, as you remember, ended with them sighting Mythros's banners,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Coming onto the field. So that's essentially what we have here. So Turgon is Fingen is in this moment retreating back from those two towers that you can kind of make out there on the arms.
These two towers, right? These are towers, and these are the arms, and this like little horseshoe valley is what Gwyndor charged into. Right. So Fingen charged in after him to try to help or save him initially. Right.
Like he was coming into the middle of those two arms, and he was just taking too much fire there, and so he starts pulling back.
And then the orcs started to come in around the back as well, and so he pulls back.
Right. Turgon by this point is moving up alongside of him, having advanced in a much more measured fashion. Is coming up alongside of him, and Hurin is also finding ways to
left flank.
Right. So basically, that's the opening of the battle scenes of episode 12.
Right, and it's Bor's chariots.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Bor's chariots coming up. They're in the front just because they're cavalry, right, and they're faster than the foot.
Right. They're already getting ready to engage here.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting I mean, of course, given the division between Bor and the rest of the army of the Easterlings, it's like really convenient that Bor is the cavalry here,
right? Because
it means it's quite natural for them to not only be detached but to be moving at a completely different not only pace but schedule from the rest of the army.
They have a completely different job.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that Bor's people and the rest of the men of the armies of the Easterlings could be doing totally separate things, and indeed in such a case contradictory things. Makes a lot of sense. So we've got Bor, Celegorm. Now Celegorm's infantry are basically heavy infantry. They're not like fully armored necessarily, but
right. Well, if you figure like right now, the things that they can get easily are weapons and armor. So these are mostly human riders, right, on elvish horses, using elvish tactics and weapons. So they're not going to be as effective.
Celegorm has mostly human riders?
Yes. So
it's the people of what's his face?
Yes.
Amlach.
Those people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So recall that many of Celegorm's own guys ended up in Nargothrond last season.
All right.
And did not come home with him.
Yes.
And are now dead inside that little bowl up there.
Right.
Or
with Gwyndor.
Or still in Nargothrond.
Still in Nargothrond, yeah.
Right. So that was a change in this season for Celegorm. So he had to train Amlach's guys and put them on horses.
Right. They were kind of acting as their light cavalry in season 5. They've gotten an upgrade, and but they're not going to be as effective as Celegorm's original cavalry would be. You'd have to imagine that there's a relationship between the Feanorian cavalryman and his mount,
and their mounts, exactly.
That humans are just not going to approach. They can ask things of their mounts that humans cannot.
No, that's easy to imagine. Okay, no, so that makes sense. I caught that at one point in the script. You said something about Celegorm's heavy cavalry, and I'm like, were they always heavy cavalry? But okay, but I mean, I knew they were heavier than the men of Dorloman.
No, they've always been a heavy cavalry fighting force for a long while, and they've their whole tactic has been essentially to come around and bash the enemy into the spears of Maedhros's infantry.
Right. Okay. Right. So Maedhros is leading the infantry. The dwarves with the siege equipment are right behind.
Yeah.
Boar's chariots on the right flank, Kelgorm's heavy cavalry on the left flank of the approaching Feanorians. And Boar's, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Boar's cavalry's huge, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of them, and also cavalry take up a lot of
especially chariots
take up a lot of space, right?
Yeah.
So they're, I would say they are at least as numerous as Maedhros's individual infantry.
Yes.
Like
he has as many chariots as they have people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you move forward from there, Turgon has kind of piled up on the Turgon's going to kind of pile up on the orcs coming out of the gate. Fingon's going to start moving back a little bit. Meanwhile, everybody's going to start getting ready to, like, all of Maedhros's kind of auxiliaries are going to get ready. Hey,
welcome. We're walking through. You're still near the beginning part of Nick walking through an overview of the tactics of the battle, so that we can follow what we're referring to when we talk about specific scenes.
Excellent. Please continue.
All right. So this, in the second map, you'll see Turgon piling up against the orcs. Hurin is working his way up and down the sides there to reduce the effectiveness of any guys coming out,
and to prevent them coming down around behind
and
Fingon.
around.
Yeah.
Right. Boar is coming up to do the same thing on Turgon's right.
Mm-hmm.
Kelgorm may not have the most confidence in Hurin's cavalry, so he's coming up to help him out, which is probably a good idea, because that left flank is still pretty weak for them,
right? Because there aren't that many of the men of Dorloman.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Maedhros is outdistancing the dwarves at this point.
Sure. As infantry would outdistance huge siege equipment being slowly hauled by dwarves.
Which is meant for later anyway.
Yeah, which you don't want to come very quickly to the foreground.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right. So in the following image, I believe is when Boar makes contact.
So this is the fight scenes with the chariot fighting scenes from episode 12 with Galadriel and Boar and
right. Fingon and Turgon are still pulling back because they're still in trouble.
Yeah.
And Maedhros is coming up alongside them. So in the map immediately after this is where that scene where Maedhros and Fingon chat would be. Is going to be like right around here. And you notice that Boar, when the non-orc, like, they do fine against the orcs, right?
Yeah.
When the non-orc forces,
like
come
the trolls
through,
came in, we had a bunch of trolls coming in.
Yeah. There's psychological impact there. These guys are not ready for this. And they're also kind of in a situation where they're acting in a way which doesn't play to their strength. They're kind of almost in a pitched situation, which is not great. Like, you don't want things that can take down your chariots running through your chariots.
Right. Trolls are pretty bad. Good anti-chariot
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So they take a bite out of them, and I believe the very next image is where we get the Sudberadin forces under Brada coming up from behind. So this is
right before the treachery is basically discovered,
revealed. Yeah.
So can I just say, as a side note here, one of the things that I was really impressed by reading the script was I felt that the effect of and this map sort of shows it pretty clearly. That sense, the way in which we're kind of expanding on that one sentence, you know, the like, but even then, you know, that sentence, you really get the sense, especially in episode 13, during the battle between Maedhros and the Easterlings. You get the real sense, like, what if they had in fact been fighting together, right? I mean, you really get the sense, like, it might have worked. Like, it might have worked.
That's one of the things in the first scene of episode 10 is really meant to drive that home when you see them working together to clean out Ladros.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that I think is awesome. And I think it's also, because I mean, we've been talking all season about how we want to make the viewers believe that it's possible, right? To give the viewers some hope that this could actually succeed. And what I like about this is that although, like, we are in fact pulling the rug out from under them, and it's not going to succeed, and they're going to lose, and most of them are going to die, but nevertheless, although that's the case, it's not like we've simply betrayed the trust. You know, like, if we got them, the thing we wanted them to try to believe, the thing we've been trying to convince them that it might have worked, isn't wrong, right? Like, it's not like it, but it turns out that was all.
They're not stupid for thinking that.
Right, exactly. We don't make them feel dumb. We don't like laugh at them for believing it after we've made them believe it. It really might have worked. It really should have worked, almost. And now, like, would they actually have won? You know, like, I don't know. But still, like,
we do have the betrayal happen prior to Angband emptying.
Yes.
So it's not like Angband emptied and they were winning and then they got betrayed.
Right.
So it's true that it's an open question of, would this have worked?
Yeah.
Maybe.
But
they never had their full force. They never had their full force against Morgoth's full force to see what that was gonna look like.
Yeah. Right.
And you know, the Balrogs are still the Balrogs.
The Balrogs are still the Balrogs. Yeah.
So the next image, I think, is the first image of this episode.
13, right. So this is after the men have destroyed the dwarves and the siege equipment.
Right. So Maedhros is now moving back and forming up to deal with Barada. Kelgorm has
is this number 6, by the way?
Yes, 6.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm keeping up.
Yeah. So Kelgorm has pulled back and is moving back to help Maedhros, because he's like, as long as Maedhros is engaged in the same battle, he doesn't mind helping out Fingid. If Maedhros is pulling away to deal with something else, he's out of there. And you can see here, this is where Hurin and his guys have kind of pulled back to kind of take a measure of what's going on.
Right.
So they're not currently engaged. The rate at which enemies are pouring out of Angband has reduced by this point. He does not, in fact, have a never-ending supply of words to throw at them. As much as it might seem so, and Bor also in a very not too distant scene, is in a pulled back situation to kind of like figure out what their next move is. Because the thing about cavalry, they cannot engage in sustained combat the way that infantry can.
Horses can't gallop indefinitely.
Right. They have to pull back. They have to deal with horses and possibly swapping horses out and whatnot. But more importantly, in this situation, if your cavalry are maintained contact with the enemy, you lose the advantage of being cavalry. You might as well just be a tall guy at that point.
Right. Yes. All those movies of medieval knights sitting on horseback and swinging their swords like against infantry whilst like the horses standing still is not the point of cavalry at all.
No. Yeah, you can't protect your horse.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is it's just a big deal.
Yeah.
Ask the French at Agincourt.
Exactly.
Okay. So after this, I have a couple of smaller maps to show the actual contact of Maedhros with Brother, but we can skip those for now.
One brief
Yeah.
One other brief comment on this. Again, at the beginning of episode, this is one of the moments where it felt so like poignant, right? Because this was the moment like when Maedhros is turning to fight Broda, and as you say, the flow of the orcs has not stopped, but it has stopped increasing, right?
Right.
This is where I got the sense most clearly that if the army they saw marching up in the distance had been marching in on their side, that this would have been, again, not necessarily like the total victory, at that point immediately, but you're talking about the tide of battle turning absolutely to their, and then Morgoth having to empty Angband just to have a fighting, or even retreating back in
and
behind
even
the walls.
just seeing how effective these guys are against the Feanorians,
right? Exactly,
is really shocking.
Yes, they would have. Yeah, I like the descriptions that you gave of that battle, where it's like, the for the men, it was like, so the men were like, they were not fighting like, tribal rebels.
Yeah.
Right? They were fighting Feanorians and had more than their hands full. But then the Feanorians weren't fighting orcs either.
Right.
They were fighting a well-disciplined military force,
professional
with strong leadership.
Courageous soldiers,
Yeah. Anyway, so now I thought that was again, as I say, this is the moment where I felt it, where I felt the real tragedy of the situation and how close it had come potentially to victory, or at least to, I mean, even if they hadn't been able to get in through the gates, right?
At least they could have besieged the actual fortification.
Yes, exactly.
Not just the plain.
Right. Yeah. Like taking the leaguer to, where Morgoth lives. But okay, so you want me to skip over the smaller tactics?
we can look at those when we're actually talking about that scene. All
right. So then the Balrogs come out.
Right. Now they have come out a minute ago by this point, but I actually, they don't become relevant to the battle until this point. So this is the point where Mablung and Beleg intervene to slow the Balrogs down, so that to give Fingin and Turgon more time. It's around this point, or like immediately after, where Hurin and Hor decide to split up and cover the flanks separately. And this is right before Bor comes to Maedhros' rescue, because at this point, like, the battle between Maedhros and Broda is essentially a war of attrition, and the Feanorians are going to lose a war of attrition against them
because they're so massively. I mean, they're outnumbered. What, like 5-1, 10-1?
I was
20-1.
I was going to say 10.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I've imagined it, and it's really interesting because they're two different, very, very different armies that are meant to do more or less the same thing, and so just the level of carnage that would be involved.
And of course, the other problem is that the longer things go on, the more likely the Feanorians are going to be fighting on two fronts, because Angband's forces are still moving.
Right. Yeah. Which I believe you see coming up next. And yes, the Mablung Beleg escapade was very clearly to give them something to do in the battle.
Hey, everybody needs something to do, and what's more, like they're too few of the people from Doriath to make a blob on this map, right? So they're not going to be part of the overall flow. I kind of liked it. It was, it was one of my favorite lines, when, wasn't it Celeborn who was like, actually, Fingen was like, don't advance, and he's like, actually, we don't answer.
We don't work for you.
we don't work for you. I really like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. Also, just like Celeborn being a badass was kind of fun, actually.
Yes.
Like, not gonna lie, that was kind of satisfying.
Yes. It satisfied me as well. Yeah.
Well, that's what he gets for hanging out with Bellig and Mablung.
That's right. Yeah.
A
certain standard to maintain. Yeah.
Here, this is where Fingen and like his closest guys make a charge on the Balrogs, which of course ends fantastically for them.
Yes.
And Rogren,
and he sends Rogren and Turgon out.
Start moving back from the field. Hurin and Huor are still covering them as best they can. And this is where Bor intervenes between Maedhros and the Easterlings, while Maedhros' forces are also under attack from the rear by the orcs that have now slipped through because there was nobody to get in the way.
Yes. Yes. So that's Celgorm on both sides, right? Celgorm trying to protect both flanks of Maedhros.
Yeah.
There,
yes.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So that's Bor charging in, and then Bor is riding around Broda.
Right. So this is and this is described in the script where basically they create a ring around Broda's army so that they can stay relatively safe and occasionally sweep in to carve at pieces of them. And anytime any of the Sud Baradin soldiers, they try to make a sortie out, they get hammered. Just
like Ugluk.
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly like Ugluk.
Yeah. And I think that's the last of the big picture maps, is the one that we just saw a moment ago, is the last of the ones on the battlefield, because after that everything gets really, really messy, really split up.
Yeah. Another thing that was really that I felt was driven home really really interestingly, like one of those things that it made me think about that I hadn't, I don't know. In the book, I think about Turgon escaping, right? And it's like, okay, Turgon has escaped. The people of Gondolin have escaped. So Gondolin has like returned to mostly what it was before. And so the impression I always get when I'm reading the Silmarillion is like, and the sacrifice of especially, the men of Dor-Lomin, but others as well, enable Gondolin to continue untouched for yet a while, right? And yet one of the things that was very powerfully, I thought, brought home by the way that you did Fingen and Fingen's final charge, was the most of the remnant of the elves of Mithrim, of the elves of the north also went to, so Gondolin isn't just, untouched or continued. When Turgon becomes the High King of the Noldor, like a huge percentage of the Noldor are now living in Gondolin, right? I mean, there's still Noldor in Nargothrond, obviously.
Of their fighters, like all the non-combatants are still back in Mithrim.
There's still a bunch of non-combatants. Yeah, exactly. No,
it is not going to go well for them.
Right. Acknowledged. And of course, there's still Feanorians wandering about as well. But yeah, anyway, it's just the fact that I like that moment of decision where Fingen decides, like, I am going to save. I cannot save the day, right? I cannot save myself, but I can save most of my army. Not only allow Turgon to escape, but also allow Turgon to escape with, you know, a large chunk of the army that I brought with me from Mithrim, so that they can all survive as well. And Rogren is kind of the poster child, right, of the soldiers from Mithrim, who ends up in Gondolin after this. But again, it just makes me think, and I'm kind of thinking ahead to, you know, future seasons, right? The future Gondolin seasons, where this has got to be a thing in Gondolin, right? Where now we have a bunch of, as you say, soldiers of Mithrim now living in Gondolin with their wives and children, who knows where, you know, and like that's gotta change the dynamics in Gondolin a bit, right? After this,
Rogren's house is going to be a very different house than all the other houses of Gondolin, right?
Yes,
and like
it's going to be like a house of warrior monks.
Yes,
I mean the House of the Hammer of Wrath. That's what it is. It's like we are here to kill Morgoth whenever he shows up.
Yeah,
yep.
Like, we're just going to wait for that.
Gondolin is kind of losing its innocence here. I mean, of course, you know, like they did fling a guy off a wall, but you know, but they're going to become more militarized from here on out. I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got. I mean, these are Rogren and his death commandos, right? Who have nothing to live for. But I mean, it's anyway. Yeah, it's going to be a big deal.
Turgon has the feeling that like the days are numbered and Morgoth's going to find us.
Yeah.
So the vigilance of Gondolin was already kind of present, and now it is only going to increase.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, as I said, that was of like the bigger picture things that this episode made me think about. That was one of the things that I found most interesting that I hadn't, as I say, when I read the Silmarillion, I think in my head, I have tended to like identify Fingon with his army, right? And kind of vaguely imagine his whole army more or less dying with him on the field and only the Gondolindrum escaping. But I really liked this innovation. And I think that, you know, even if it is an innovation, we're not told explicitly that his whole army died, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, what we are told is that everyone who could flee fled, and those who did flee fled to Gondolin, right? So we are in fact explicitly told that there are non-Gondolindrim who flee back to Gondolin with Turgon after the battle. But I'd never really... This forced me to think that through in a new way, which has really... it has an inescapable effect, I think, on my understanding of Gondolin in the future.
Yeah, you know, you name a character, and now suddenly their story matters.
There you go. Now their story matters. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, Tolkien never does that, of course.
No. And, but see, if you name him like 7 times, then his story matters even more, right? So that's part of the secret. Yeah.
So that's the general flow of the battle itself.
Right. Okay.
Which is ironically a less complex animal than the Dagor Bragollach. It's
way less, especially since the Dagor Bragollach was divided on like 3 different fronts, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some of the specific stories we have on this first slide here. The Eastern Front. We've talked in the very biggest picture about the betrayal and its sort of larger impact on the story flow and our reactions. Maedhros's charge, I thought was so. This was the thing that I found low key coolest thing in the entire episode. Actually, was Maedhros's point of view. Maedhros's right up to the edge of suicidal outlook in the battle, and the way in which it becomes more and more clear why he is so desperate not to retreat. Because of the oath, because dying in battle is so preferable to him than being compelled to carry out the oath, because he knows that once they're out of battle, and it is now almost impossible, having lost, with all of these losses, there can be no further union. Any hope of military action against Angband is permanently dashed at this point.
Yes.
That means they have to keep trying to get the Silmarils, and there's only one available. And that's, so the way that we set that up at the beginning, the way that it pays that off, right? His plans, Maedhros' plans, way back in episode 1, and the way that one of the reasons he was pushing the Union was because it would push off and perhaps prevent entirely, or at least totally change the context of the evil day, right? That was, I loved that sort of whole overall, usually submerged but occasionally peeking up throughout the season motif of Maedhros doing everything he can to prevent another kinslaying, in the only way that he can. He can't just stand against the oath. He can't just he can't just prevent it. I mean, he is powerless himself to prevent his brothers from following the oath.
Maglor might disagree.
I think he and Magwar will disagree about this at least one point.
Eventually. But at this point, I don't think that he sees any option other than delay or this.
Yeah.
And
delay or this. And like victory is the best possible outcome.
Sure.
Obviously. Yeah.
Right. He would like to regain the Silmarils or die trying.
Yeah.
Retreating without gaining them and without dying was not the goal.
Dying trying is the second best option, but it is infinitely better than the third best option. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And he's been pretty confident about their chances in the battle all along. So the or die trying was the backup plan, but that was not like the goal or anything.
Right.
But as the battle gets worse and worse, the desperation of we have to does increase significantly.
Yeah. And the way he trends from I am willing to take any risk, even though I am willing to proceed, even though things seem to be turning against us, to I am going to stubbornly persist, even though we are actively losing, to all hope is gone and we are certainly defeated, but I'm going to attack. Right. In the end, until finally, like, there is nothing he can do but retreat, because it's like him and Magor surrounded by, orcs. Right. Anyway, so that's one way in which we can see that trend, which again I just found more and more compelling as we went through. But the second element of it, of course, is his interactions with his brothers, like the fact that the other Feanorians, Magor doesn't get it at the beginning. Magor doesn't get it, right? Maglor is just thinking like a captain, right? Trying to do what's best for the army and what seems most likely to lead to eventual victory. But Maglor, seems to be ignoring the other element, the thing that Maedhros is anticipating. As far as I could tell, Maglor seemed to be slow on the uptake when it came to he wasn't immediately thinking of Doriath and the probable invasion of Doriath that would come if they in fact retreated. Yeah. And then of course the two different confrontations, right, with Curufin, where it's much more explicit. Yes. But yeah, I thought that
Curufin's totally cool with leaving to fight another day, and he's totally cool with that other day being against Doria.
Exactly. Right. He's like, well, we have a fallback option for getting a Silmaril, so that's all right. Right. Yeah. And yeah,
we gave it the old Conlich try. Exactly.
The difference in perspective. Anyway, the result of all of this was really, it was for me one of the most moving parts of the whole thing. In fact, to see Maedhros attempting to maneuver in this desperate situation, and he does everything except kill himself. Basically, I mean, he doesn't actually commit suicide, but it's the one thing he doesn't do.
Well, I mean, there's not a huge difference between his charge here and Feanor running out ahead and getting surrounded by Balrogs. The main difference is that Maglor was able to save him.
Yes.
I think without Maglor there, Mithras doesn't survive this battle.
Yeah.
And possibly even if it had been Amras who was with him and Maglor had been wounded earlier, I think Amras would have been fine with it. And now we both go down fighting, and that's that. Like,
yes.
Amras wouldn't have been the I've got to get us all out of here at all costs.
Amras was clearly the one most on board with Mithras' plan, right?
So if you had just switched those two brothers as to who got hurt fighting the men earlier, I think Mithras' charge does end in death.
Or if it had been if it had been Curufin, right? Then like Curufin's still going to try to talk him out of it, but his Maglor succeeds where I think Curufin would have failed because his reason for talking about it would be completely different.
Yeah.
Right. Maglor understands Mithras very well. So that certainly helps.
Yes.
Yeah. So sorry, I should Cyclops here on Twitch we should probably do a little brief summary to make sure everybody knows where things stand as far as the surviving Feanorians and kind of where they stand in relationship to the Oath, right? So we've got Caranthir and Curufin and Celegorm, none of whom would be particularly bothered. They're especially Curufin and Celegorm. No, all three of them are they're quite ready for the next kinslaying, right?
Right. They are of the opinion that we should be demanding the Silmarillion from Doriath, and Doriath should give it to us.
Well, yeah.
And if they don't, we should do something about it.
Yeah.
However, with the Girdle of Melian in place, it's not like they have the ability to enter Doriath, even if they wanted to. So the idea of a kinslaying happening in Doriath does seem not quite on the table or not quite real. Mithras is worried about it.
They'd have to come up with a plan.
Right. Well, it's like, how do you even get
it's not as easy
Doriath?
as wanting to, right?
Right. So there's a barrier in place, but Mithras knows that there is an inevitable conflict there that will result in dead elves, no matter how this turns out, because Thingol's not going to give up a Silmaril, and the Feanorians aren't going to stop asking for it.
Yeah.
So elves are going to die in this conflict somehow.
Yeah. So but those three brothers aren't concerned about that. That maybe those elves should die in this conflict if they won't give us the Silmaril is kind of their exactly.
Point of view.
Amras is kind of on his own in that he's the one. If any of them are nihilistic, he's the one who's nihilistic, right? He's the one who he hates the Oath but can't escape it, and.
Right. So if Mithras is like, I'm going to try everything I can do to defeat Morgoth and get the Silmarils back, and if not, die in battle is okay. Amras is like, let's all go die in battle, so then we don't have to worry about this Oath anymore.
Right.
That was choice one for Amras.
He's the only one who actively complains about the Oath.
Yeah.
Amras is,
And there's maybe a reason that he acted the way he did in the fighting to get injured so early in this battle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody gets injured. It's a big battle. But his choices weren't. His choices weren't like, what would be the best thing to do right now.
Yes.
So he's not like suicidal, but he's perfectly fine with the idea of dying in battle because that's at least honorable, unlike the stupid Oath.
Yes. Yes. Maglor and Mithros, both of them are still bound by the Oath, but those are the two who are still hoping at the very least to minimize the damage that the Oath does.
Right. From Mithras' point of view, the enemy has always been Morgoth. He hates Morgoth. He would like to fight Morgoth. Mm-hmm. He would like to defeat Morgoth.
Yes.
So the fact that Morgoth stole their Silmarils and the Oath points him against Morgoth, he's fine with that.
Right.
He has no reason to want conflict with Thingol and Doriath. He wants nothing to do with that side of things.
Right.
But the Oath. So he has that problem, and he's trying to address the problem. And what he shared with Curufin early in the season was, hey, if we go win this battle and defeat Morgoth and get the Silmarils back from him, and then turn around with a giant victorious army and say, hey, Thingol, can we have our Silmaril back?
Right. Can we have the whole set, please? Yes. Yes.
Maybe Thingol will turn it over at that point because it looks like, So he's like, maybe if we negotiate from a point of strength, it'll all work out somehow.
Right. And in any case, as you say, to Maedhros, and really to Maedhros alone of the Feanorian brothers, defeating Morgoth is actually more like the oath is for him a means to that end. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like as much as he is
driven by the oath. Yeah.
To get the Silmarils back. He has very personal reasons for hating Morgoth.
Defeating Morgoth is his primary goal. Yes.
And he's been so focused on that and so driven by that for so long until now. Mm-hmm. This kills that for him. He can't. He still hates Morgoth.
But it's the death of his dream of actually doing it.
Yeah. Right. So from here on out, his anger towards Morgoth is just eating him inside. He can't do anything about it after this battle.
And he does. And of course, even from that perspective, like any further conflict between Doriath and the Feanorians is only going to weaken further any ability they still had to resist Morgoth in any way. Right. So Maedhros's resistance to, or his attempts to prevent problems with Doriath, to divert his brothers in the Angband direction and away from the Doriath direction, is in part to keep the peace, but it's not like that's his first priority. Like, I just don't want to see anyone, I just can't bear to see an elf kill another elf. Like, it's not that he wants that, but it's not because of pacifism that he wants to do that.
Right.
Principally. Maglor is the one who is more of if there is a pacifist Feanorian, it's Maglor.
Pacifist is a bit strong.
It's a strong word.
I know.
Yeah.
I would rather say that Maglor's the one who still has a concept of his family as a family. Like, he wants his brothers to be friends and get along and all that sort of thing. And he certainly has by now recognized that there is significant strife and divisions between them all.
Yeah.
So he might want to salvage something, to heal something, to play peacemaker on some level, but not to the point of being like, now guys, don't hurt the other elves. He's not quite that much of a peacemaker.
Right.
But healer, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because I'm in my annual rereading of the Lord of the Rings now, and I just got today to the Black Gate, the first time Frodo and Sam and Gollum at the Black Gate. And so I just had read that scene today, and then I was of course reading the script later on in the evening, and I was thinking about Maglor. Made me think of that line that Sam is thinking about the kindness of Master Frodo being so great that it seemed to involve a fair bit of blindness, right? And Maglor in this episode made me think of that a little bit. Like, he is the kindest of the Feanorian brothers. But there did also seem to be some blindness in it, in that he seemed with Maedhros at the beginning, he seemed he didn't get it. Like, he didn't foresee, as you say, he wanted, like, let's retreat and not let, like, why should we all die, or should all of our people die, in this, like, when things have turned against us, let's regroup and live. And he seems not to get the fact that, like, that's going to lead to another kinslaying fairly directly.
Right. And I think that we've seen Maglor and Maedhros be together and on the same wavelength a lot prior to this season. But once this whole union was being put into place, Maedhros was like, okay, Maglor, I can trust you to run him ring for me while I run around and do this whole union thing.
Right.
And he took Amros with him and he did other things, but he didn't like hang out with Maglor in the whole lead up to this battle. And even in episode 12, most of the Feanorians were already in Ladros and like getting ready for the battle. And then Maglor comes and joins last with the contingent from Himring. So Maglor's been a little bit out of the loop because Maedhros trusted him to understand and do his job. Which means that, maybe Maglor hasn't taken the time to think through the future repercussions of what would happen if they failed at this battle. Like, he's been trusting Maedhros, who keeps saying, we're going to win this thing, to be like, okay, we're going to go win this thing. So then when they start losing, it's like, okay, well, maybe we're going to lose, but let's just do the normal thing of retreat, regroup, rethink this. You know, who could have foreseen the betrayal of these, of these, you know, allies?
Yes.
It's like Mandos foresaw it.
It might have. He might even have warned you actually about that. Yeah.
Yes,
potentially. Yeah. Anyway, this was, as I say, this was one of my one of the elements of this episode that I found really fascinating was the intra-Feanorian dynamics and the largely unspoken, like, Maedhros never, like, none of them, this Nick, I thought was one of the things that I really admired about how you wrote it, is that it's largely unspoken. Like, nobody says the things aloud, really. I mean, like, they talk about stuff, but, you know, Maedhros doesn't have a speech where he's like, I would rather die than return back. You could just tell that he would rather die than return back.
Nick, you're muted.
Speaking of unspoken, Nick, you're still muted. Yeah, exactly.
I definitely didn't want him to be that explicit. There was a version of the discussion with him between him and Corfin, which I think got a little bit closer to saying the quiet part out loud about Doriath without actually saying it.
Yeah.
But fortunately, we managed to reel that back in with helpful snips from the editors. It was important for me not to be too explicit with what these guys were thinking while still showing the audience what's going on there.
No, it was good. And one of the things that I really liked about, or rather, one of the things that I think makes that, I mean, it's always a gamble, right? When you like have implicit character development, you don't spell it out. It's always a gamble that people aren't going to follow, but there's plenty of time. Like, the Doria thing is in fact going to come about later on, right? So we will have plenty of time for people to see what the actual outcome is going to be, so that even if you're not correctly anticipating it or not tracking with the full implications of what Maedhros is doing and why, the only risk is that you're just going to think that Maedhros has gone crazy or is just like in despair and suicidal, which is like adjacent to the reality anyway. So that's not a terrible gamble.
Yeah, it would be possible to see what he's doing as simply stubborn, like too stubborn to give up his idea, and that's why he gets to where he is. But there's enough hints there that that's not the only thing going on. Like, he is a stubborn guy.
He is stubborn, and the desperate, like, even though it seems certain we're going to lose, but yeah, the
desperation is very clear, and he's been called on it throughout the season of why now? Why are you so desperate to go fight this battle right now when it doesn't look like any better of a time than it has in the past? So it's been an underlying theme before we got here. So I think that you can see in the battle motions like what is going on there with that.
Let's talk about, also, by the way that Fingon's death connects with that also gives another reason, like another way to understand it, another way to make sense of it that is beyond, you know, these larger Feanorian issues, right, that are going on kind of behind the scenes, or half behind the scenes in any case.
The part where he experiences Fingon's death rather than just like learns of it is kind of understandably upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I wasn't sure if we were going to get or not, and we got a tiny, I guess, a little bit of it at the very beginning or near the very beginning of the episode, but almost not at all, was returning to like Uldor's point of view, or like what was going on from their perspective, because of course we got that whole build up in the last episode and their decision. So we got them through the betrayal, right, through the decision to do the betrayal, but then we kind of never go back to them again. My first impulse was to be a little bit disappointed by that. But then I was thinking about it more, and I was like, actually, it's probably a really good idea, because one of the things that's hard when I think about it, their perspective is hard not to get myself into, but to keep myself in, if you see what I mean. Like the rationale for attacking, because they feel that they had been betrayed, that worked for me sufficiently. Like I was down with the betrayal in episode 12. But on this day, like, so you're Brada, you're attacking, right? You come up and you attack from the rear, and you're fighting this like ridiculous pitched battle against this army that you expected to swamp because you outnumber them 10, 15 to 1. Right. But then you don't. But what's more, like, what do they make of the army of orcs and trolls behind them?
Yeah.
Right? Like, with whom they have no alliance, right? Like
they have no guarantee that that's going to go well.
No. Yeah. Like, what does a positive outcome look like? Like, again, it's one thing to say, like, this is why we're advancing, this is why we're charging, right? But like, once you're invested and you're seeing the whole picture, right, and you've got this massive army of orcs, like, even if they had, which is ridiculous, but even if they had plowed through the Feanorians, like they weren't, then what? Right? Turn around and go home? Like, run away, fight the orcs? If so, why? Yeah. And if not, why not? Like, anyway, it's hard.
And that's partially like that's kind of our doing, because we haven't set up any relationship between the between Sauron and and
or like Morgoth, especially,
or Morgoth,
and
and Uldor's not in command. If Uldor had been in command, well, he's had contact with Sauron, he's had assurances. At least there's that, right? Brada has none of those things.
Yes.
So, yeah, I can imagine that being a little tough to parse out in the middle of this battle.
Yeah, but as I said, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, actually, just kind of like drawing the veil of silence over that's
a season 8 issue. We'll figure out what their motivations were at this point in season 8.
Well, and how they, because again, I mean, look, like, it was a day of chaos, right? And they didn't just charge through the elves, right? So it's easy to imagine them getting at least a little bit fixated on the enemy that they were pursuing and failing, despite the odds enormously in their favor, failing to plow through as he had assumed they would plow through. But
and then Boar shows up, and now they're kind of stuck there.
Now they're occupied. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we do have time later on to kind of reconstruct after the fact what did happen and how it went down and all that kind of thing. But it did seem that like an actual blow by blow, like an actual them making decisions in the moment and all that would have been tough.
Yeah.
Would have been challenging. So in the end, although again, I found it a little bit, we got that one scene with Brada being a general, right?
Yes.
That was it. Like the one little glimpse to remind us of it. And then after that, we never returned to their perspective, even when Bor charges in and kills Uldor and Olfast. Right. Well, he kills Uldor, and then Galadriel killed Olfast, wasn't it? Or
No, the other way.
The other way around, yeah.
It's Bor is fighting Uldor and Olfast, gets himself mortally wounded while killing one of them. Galadriel gets to take out Uldor, as agreed upon earlier in our discussions.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is why Maglor got to kill a dragon.
Which is why Maglor got to kill a dragon.
That had just mauled Mithros.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
And got to be the only one that was able to remotely keep up with Mithros besides his banner bearer, who immediately got murked.
Right. By the dragon, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, anyway, it was, as I say, it was a little bit odd at first, but I think it was a good choice, and there'll be time to sort that out later. I mean, we're going to have to return to them and sort them out. Broda and Lorgan, in the next season anyway.
Right. There's some significant aftermath of this battle, things that are not being dealt with in this episode.
Yeah. Right.
And obviously the whole Hill of Slain thing, as you pointed out right before we started.
Yeah.
And this of what do you do with the survivors from Soothbarad afterwards, now that they're, I guess, aligned with Angband, maybe?
Right.
Like that we need more time and space to figure it out. It couldn't just be see, this is what they're doing now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yep,
the invasion of Dorloman will be its own storyline.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that makes good sense. Bor and Galadriel were awesome. I just loved Bor and Galadriel. Bor and Galadriel. I now want like a whole Bor and Galadriel spin-off buddy series. That would have been awesome. Bor and Galadriel were phenomenal. The death scene of Bor was to me the most moving in the entire episode. That was what moved me to tears, was the death of Bor.
Yeah. I got really emotional while I was working on it. I was like, wait, why is this the thing?
Yes.
It's because I knew all the other stuff was coming.
Yes.
Yes, but also we have space there to actually stay with them, and we mourn him in a way that we don't get to mourn the other characters at all. Who's mourning Fingon at any point in this episode?
Well, Mithros sort of furiously.
Mithros is killing things about it.
Right.
That's one way of mourning.
Right.
But he's not doing the
memorial.
What does this mean for me that Fingon is gone now?
Yes.
Like a tiny bit at the very end of I should be the one who's out there dead and not. But
even after that, like when he's looking at the handless stump of his arm, do we think that he's thinking about Morgoth? No, he's got to be thinking about the reason why he's missing a hand.
Right.
Friends chop off hands for each other. That's right. It's an important lesson.
His enduring reminder of Fingon's friendship. Right.
Yes.
The stump of his right arm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that there's no mourning, but not much.
But I agree.
Not really.
Nothing
not
like the moment that we got with Bor and Galadriel.
Not like the farewell between Bor and Galadriel, where we get to see what Bor thinks is good in life, and we get to hear Galadriel.
So, like this guy that we've developed over this time, this boisterous warrior, like. What does Bor think is best in life?
Yes.
It's not what Conan thinks is best in life at all.
Exactly. I was thinking about that. Yeah.
And the children that he's seeing in his memory are his full-grown sons who just died in the war with him.
Yeah.
So this is him mourning his dead sons as well as remembering good days. There's a lot going on in that scene that the other parts of the episode didn't have the time or space to do that sort of thing with.
And one thing that scene also did was do this really interesting thing of combining Osanwe Kenta with fairy and drama to actually give Boar's final moments like this peaceful place to be in.
Yes. And that was so different from any other moment in the entire episode. Yeah. No, that was just awesome. I couldn't. I was a little surprised that Boar died. I thought we might. Well, I mean,
that's because you wanted the buddy cop show with him and Galadriel.
With him and Galadriel, yeah, it's true. I wanted
them to ride off into the sunset together.
I did want them to be able to ride off into the sunset together. Well, and it's just also with the death of Boar and his two sons felt like the dissolution of like the good Easterlings, right?
Yeah.
Which we know aren't going to be dissolved. And so I mean, obviously there are survivors and will be survivors to go off back into the East and eventually become the Aeltheod. But
Alana was very careful to gift some horses.
All right, we got the Mayaris
to Boar's people.
Time.
And those horses were, of course, not going to be sent into the battle. They were going to be kept back at the So if any of Boar's people survive this battle, they can take their horses and go off over the mountains and never be seen again. But later.
No, so, but it was. I think that's why, because Boar was the last one of them to die, and so that's why I was kind of I didn't know. Now look, none of the named characters surviving is totally on brand for this episode, but that's why I wasn't sure if some named person of the people of Boar was going to survive to be the survivor going off to.
Technically, Boar does have 3 sons who were in this battle, and we only saw 2 of them die on screen. So I know that Tolkien requested that all of Boar's sons die in the battle, but we have not yet shown that. So if someone really wanted to have a son of Boar in the future, like, we could say that he escaped the battle, took the horses, got out of there, and just no one knew that he lived. He changed his name and no one knows he's the son of Boar anymore. Like, whatever. Like, we could, if we really, really wanted that.
We've left the door just cracked open.
Again, we didn't show him living. We just didn't show a death scene for one of the 3 sons.
The death of Boar, because one of the reasons I really wanted to do it was to have at least a scene where somebody died not in the battle itself.
Yes.
Where and to have somebody on hand so that we could get that mourning in a way that wasn't just like offhanded or in amongst a montage of shots, to give us a chance to really kind of live with the cost.
No, that was cool. All right, let's think about the Western Front. We talked about Fingon's charge some. I did one of the other things, just personally, I mean, I talked about like the sort of political implications of it, right, which were quite nice. But I also liked it personally, right? Fingon is killed by Gothmog, but he's not merely surrounded and overwhelmed, right? Which is kind of the impression. I mean, the book doesn't tell you tactics at that moment,
right?
But it's kind of the impression that I get, right? That he was just overwhelmed and stomped by Gothmog in the battle.
Well, I mean, it depends how you interpret that was a grim meeting. Like,
right. Oh no, that he put up a real fight is
But it also feels at least the tiniest bit deliberate on Fingon's part. Like, here I am to face you personally for some reason at this moment. I agree. There's no tactics there to know why that would happen, but there seems to be at least some indication that Fingon is in Gothmog's way,
right,
for some reason.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the turning that more explicitly into a full-blown, I am going to sacrifice myself so that most of my, surviving people can escape. I liked that element. I mean, it was, a little bit reminiscent of his father, of course, which was nice. It was, though he accomplished more in one sense, right, with his death than his father, one could argue. That his death did in fact accomplish something. Again, I also liked, again, the image which you return to right at the very end in the closing tag, which had always moved me so much. I mean, like, moved me depressingly, but that image of his banner being trampled into the mud, right, which is such a strong and powerful image in that moment. It's one of the things that Tolkien does so well in battle contexts in his books, right? He rarely actually describes battle tactics and stuff like that, but he's really wonderful.
It tells you what you would see.
Yes, he's wonderful at these these images that stick with you and that really convey stuff. But anyway, the kind of horrible, like, horror and tragedy of Fingon's death,
which I did kind of shy away from. This isn't the only time that I do this. We'll probably wind up talking about the other one later. I did kind of shy away from because the way it's described, like he gets like pretty much bisected by Gothmog's axe. Years ago, I did a little bit of calculating, and it was like the amount of force that it would take to shear even a regular steel helmet,
right, would
just smash you into the ground immediately. Like your body would just turn to jelly under that amount of force. So no. And I think that we have figured out a way to have the helmet be cloven, and yet it still works.
Right. Yep. The fact that he died accomplishing something, I thought was really good. I have to say, it also, in that exchange, in the battle in the fight sequence there, led to the biggest surprise I got in the whole episode was a cameo of Ancalagon. I was like, what is going on there?
Hey, that was from the discussion that we had
long enough ago that I forgot about it completely. So Ancalagon is there?
Ancalagon, I will remind you, in our world, is at this point a Balrog.
Right. Okay. Right.
And having Gothmog call for help was a perfect time.
Now I'm vaguely remembering this.
For him for him to call him by name.
Yes. Yes. So the context of that is tantalizing and guaranteed to confuse and outrage,
equally
all Tolkien fans who watch this, and get them saying what Tolkien fans always say under these kinds of circumstances: these people don't know anything. They thought Ancalagon was a Balrog. Like, what morons.
Maybe, but not for the reasons you think.
Right, exactly. Fools, yes. Idiots, no. Yes.
Dave, were you there for this discussion?
Nope.
Okay.
I missed this one, so
maybe we should explain
I'm confused and infuriated.
There you go. Good.
Yes.
Good.
I'm starting to wonder whether you guys know anything about Tolkien.
Well, I mean, sometimes a line that makes no sense still works. So, like, Prebine from Dunland means literally nothing to the audience.
Right.
But they can see the birds.
Right.
So it's not like you can't figure out these are birds, and then the birds show up with Saruman. These birds are spies.
Yes.
Right.
Like the meaning is conveyed, even if the words are meaningless,
Right.
or opaque in meaning to the audience.
Yes.
So some months
I'm not
ago,
sure this one is that.
This is not exactly.
No, this causes confusion for different reasons. So we had a discussion a couple of months ago, I believe, about winged dragons and like where do winged dragons come from? Because
the innovation, right? Like Morgoth has his R&D department working. He made the first dragons, and we've already kind of tried to figure out what that meant and what that, how that happened.
Naturally, you thought there were other creatures of Morgoth with wings, so let's go with them.
But you see, the Balrogs, they do not currently have wings,
exactly.
Right?
But
their spirits remember their wings. And so when this Balrog and Galakon his spirit is placed into the body of a dragon, right? One of Glaurung's brood, the new body manifests the wings that his spirit remembers.
I see.
So the winged dragons are not just some kind of longitudinal breeding program, right? Where he like selects genetically for it would take kind of a while to take unwinged dragons and turn them into a winged species just by
that's true.
A breeding program.
You would think, yeah.
Yeah. So like some kind of intervention had to happen, right? So we're like, so some kind of more, and then, but this is also part of our trying to figure out what the heck dragons are and how that R&D project worked in the first place. And so the investment of a powerful evil spirit into a great beast was kind of our theory for Glaurung in the first place, and
which we very conveniently never discussed or showed on screen in any form whatsoever.
Nope.
He just showed up out of nowhere.
Exactly.
That was
and we've never explained it.
That's since Tolkien doesn't, we don't have to either. But
I mean,
yeah.
Yep.
But
people are sure to hate it.
Agreed.
And just be very confused by it. Like, why is he calling out this particular name at this time, and what does that mean, if anything? And
Yep. Okay. I am having vague memories of this conversation from before now, but and I remember thinking people were going to think we were crazy back then too, but
it's definitely one of the crazier ideas we've had.
Agreed.
It's certainly not the craziest.
No. But by the way, like these kinds of conversations are the other thing that make me so much more patient with the Rings of Power than so many other people. Because I'm like, there's nothing crazy that they've come up with that, like, I mean, it's not until you try to do it that you like find you understand the ways in which you get around to crazy solutions. Because it's one thing to sit back and just say, well, that's crazy, they shouldn't have done that. But you have to then come up with other solutions.
Great mud puddle worms of the South.
I mean, exactly. I mean, again, now that's still not to say that every like decision, every choice, howsoever crazy, is defensible. But
But the idea of, well, that's weird and crazy, so therefore it's bad. It's like, okay, things could be weird and crazy and bad.
Yeah.
But just because it's weird doesn't mean it doesn't fit or help to show some aspect of the story that we wouldn't have been able to see otherwise.
Yeah.
Necessarily. I mean, again, will anybody buy this with the wings on the dragon? I don't know. But, at least we have a reason for it. And the counter argument is, well, where do you think the wings came from?
Yeah,
there has to be.
It's really hard to imagine it's through a gradual breeding program, and genetic selectiveness,
That does not really seem like how you get winged dragons.
I mean, the response is almost certainly going to be because magic is right. But what?
What does that mean? Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that the difference between magic and science is not as extreme as it could be, and
Definitely.
therefore people expect magic to have rules and to work in a very particular way that's repeatable and observable and very scientific. So again, okay, it's magic. How does this magic work? And if you can't explain it, you haven't finished answering the question.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And and that, of course, to say it happens by magic is certainly not to come up to have made an answer that is like more Tolkien, faithful than our wild and wacky idea.
Well, I mean, it was easy enough for him to say, like, he that Morgoth breeds dragons.
Yes.
Like, we all know what dragons are. Like,
Right.
we get that, right?
Right.
It's the transition from this kind of dragon to that kind of dragon that gets more difficult to rationalize when you start actually thinking about it, when like apparently that happened in the course of a couple of centuries.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah. Well,
not even, because
not
like
even.
they're not even young dragons by now.
Right.
And we're gonna need Caligon to be full grown in less than 100 years.
Right. Yep. No, it's
we have plenty of seasons left of SilmFilm. We don't have a lot of
seasons,
years.
not a lot of time. Yes,
not a lot of years.
That's true. We have more space for storytelling than we have passage of time. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was good. One of the other things that I really liked about the fight scene between Fingon and Gothmog. Fingolfin laid the groundwork, right, to say like even Fingolfin versus Morgoth, one-sided fight, yes, hopeless fight, but he held his own for a while, right? Like he was not helpless against Morgoth himself. Fingon is even less helpless against Gothmog, right? And we have not yet seen a Balrog die, but we got a taste of the fact that maybe it could happen, right?
Yeah,
right.
And I thought was another thing that like narratively we accomplished in that scene, which I think is important.
Right. If Morgoth is not unassailable,
right?
Why would Gothmog
be unassailable? And yes, if Fingon could take him under those terrible circumstances, how about under better circumstances? And maybe even like
Ithilien do
with a handy fountain, perhaps,
and a spiky helmet.
I can't wait. Oh, it's the best scene ever. It's the best.
So this is where I remind you that we cast Sebastian Stan as Ithilien.
It's the best.
He's already familiar with acting while missing a limb.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, he's very good at holding an arm behind his back.
Now he gets to try too.
Oh gosh.
So
he's
good.
Ready.
So good. Yeah. I don't think there's a single character death scene in all of the Silmarillion I am more looking forward to than Ithilien and Gothmog. But anyway, yes. And of course, by the way, this is one of the other things that's really fun about the Balrog rule is the way that, again, the appearance of Balrogs on the battlefield has been invested with this horrible and ineluctable dread is really, really wonderful, dramatically speaking.
Yeah.
But it's going to be even more amazing when we get to the fall of Gondolin and we have like the great and unexpected mortality of Balrogs, right. On that day. The turnaround, right, is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, because even in this scene, there's like this. Oh, maybe. Well, but nobody's ever beaten a Balrog.
No one's ever been a Balrog. Yeah, yeah. And I think the parallel between Fingin and Fingolfin there in those fight scenes
it's really interesting how Fingin parallels Fingolfin and Maedhros parallels Feanor.
Right.
In the same episode.
Yes. Yeah. It's fun. Yeah, exactly. So people like, attentive viewers will notice those things, right? Yeah. And yet, although it suggests that Gothmog is not unassailable, it still doesn't give away the big finish in Gondolin. When's that going to be? Season 12 or 11?
Earlier than 12, but
season 11 or something. I want to say 10.
Was it 10? Gondolin falls in 10?
I have to look back at our list.
I don't remember.
It's not 8 or 9.
It's not 8 or 9.
That much is absolutely
but it's
true.
Also not 12. So it's either 10 or 11.
Yeah. Okay.
Bulldog finally eats it. Yeah.
Bulldog's death. So we have, and now Gothmog and Sauron are really the only ones still standing, right?
Yes.
Now that Bulldog was second string, as far as villains anyway. But anyway, he was a strong second string, and he's gone now. Haldir and Hundir. I was surprised. Like, that's not where my money would have been, I think, on who gets to kill Bulldog.
The idea was that of everyone in this battle who could accomplish something by killing Bulldog or have it mean something, the only real sense of like this is fair vengeance was for the people of Haleth.
Yeah.
Because of the death of Haleth's father and brother.
Right. Right. So
at the stockade.
Remembering the fight at the stockade. Yeah.
In fact, I think I specifically referenced the fact that Haldir is carrying Haleth's old spear.
Right. It's Haleth's old spear that pierces him in the back of the knee.
Yes.
Right. And perhaps no other weapon would have like.
Some have said
that spear was
it remembers Bulldog.
Yes, it was writ with
I mean, it also killed
spells
Tevildo.
For his death.
Spells for the death of Bulldog. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But the idea being that it would have a callback to that, whereas no other interaction would have that level of meaning with Bulldog. So like other people could have killed him, but in this chaotic battle where we're going all over the place, to create like a tableau that would be like, hey, that looks like the other one. The only thing to call back to was Haldad.
Haldad, yeah. So that was, like I said, it made more sense in retrospect, thinking it through in that way. But that was a while back. Like that's you must have a pretty retentive memory to connect that.
Yeah. And so if you don't see it, then it's just, well, the people of Haleth were in the Fens of Sarek when Bulldog showed up, so they had to fight him.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a logistic. Okay, they were there.
And we once again have men coming to the aid of the elves.
Yes.
When they're in trouble. Which
at that spot, right? I mean, like
in the Fens of Sarek in particular.
The Fens of Sarek, the place where humans rescue elves all the time. Yes. Yeah.
You'd think they would just stay out of the Fens of Sarek.
Exactly. Yeah, it's time to maybe put up some fencing.
That I-95 corridor, man.
Yeah. So it's clearly there's a trend there, but yeah, no, I mean, it certainly worked. It worked on that level as well. There was also even just the men of Brethil were clearly the weakest single unit at the Near-Ninth, right? I mean, like, there's nobody else. Like, they were the lowest and the weakest. They're the biggest underdogs on the field.
Maybe the dwarves with the siege engines, because they weren't even an army. They were just like,
well, yeah.
I mean, the Doriath contingent
was small.
small but fierce, right?
Yes.
So,
I was about to say, it's Beleg and Mablung. Nobody in their right mind wants to fight Beleg or Mablung.
No, exactly. So
yeah, the Haladin are smaller.
So it had an appeal. I mean, the clear, Mary and the Witch King parallel kind of played that out well enough, right? The whole, them being the functional equivalent of hobbits on this battlefield, right?
It also gives kind of like a destiny to Handir, right? Like he's one of the three that gets pulled into Gondolin. Why these three? Well, Huar, we very clearly know.
Yes.
Hurin, we very clearly know. Handir, well, at least he gets to kill Boltog.
He gets to kill Boltog, yeah. And he doesn't actually survive. I mean, he because he's with them when they're retreating and dying, right? After that?
No. Handir's going to survive.
Handir survives?
Haldir dies.
Haldir dies.
And Handir survives.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea being that the men of Brethil retreat after the death of Bulldog, which is before the last stand of the men of Dorloman.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So Handir. That's
Handir goes
the
with Doriath
contingent. Yeah, they go with them.
Oh, right. So. That's right.
So
okay.
It's not like they opted out of the last stand. It's that they left before the last stand happened.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And of course, we do need the Doriath contingent to both survive and not end up in Gondolin. So, they needed it. They needed an exit.
Yeah,
I think it was a while ago since I wrote that now, but I feel like Beleg is like the chief comforter of Handir there, which, given his relationship with the people of Brethil, made sense to me.
Yeah. Celeborn and Mablung have speaking roles earlier, and Beleg is just there when they're fighting the trolls.
Yeah,
and then here in the Fens of Sarek, Beleg is the one speaking, and the other two kind of take a backseat to that. So it shows the different dynamics. Of the group.
No, that makes a lot of sense, especially with, as you said, not only because of his relationship with them, not only does his speaking role make sense, but again, that choice to say, instead of, for the Doriath contingent, instead of saying, oh, let's help the men of Dorloman or something, for them to be like, let's stick with the men of Brethil, because they're still the biggest underdogs, right? Like they could get stumped if they.
Oh yeah, they're not being much help if they wait around.
Yeah.
Like Dorloman does. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that was good. The death of Bulldog was fun. The last stand of the men of Dorloman. First of all, I think this, of course, was another, and I was prepared for this. I was waiting for it, right? That wonderful moment that happens not infrequently, but not very far from all the time either in SilmFilm scripts, when we get to suddenly lapse into direct quotation from the text, right? And the like famous lines that you've been waiting for suddenly start rolling in. I felt that the transition in and out of that in this scene was really well done. Like, it felt really smooth. Sometimes it's hard, right? Because of the register of the Silmarillion, that sometimes it's hard to work Tolkien's Silmarillion lines into, a longer dialogue, right? That is not always easy, and the seams
indeed
are often quite audible, right? I felt that this was really quite smooth. I liked that a lot. here in this episode. And I found, you know, Huor's words to Turgon. It was very moving in this context. Again, just the way that you contextualized it both before and afterwards, I found really effective. I like the way it was anticipated as well. You had Huor kind of hinting at it with Turgon earlier on in the, talking about Turgon, I mean, with Hurin, earlier in the episode.
Well, as you say, it's bookended. So we start with the viewpoint of Hurin and Huor, and as the disaster starts unfolding in the first quarter of the battle, it's like, they are starting to realize what this might turn into, and then we come back to them at the end for the last quarter there, and we see what they've decided to do in between.
And it's interesting because whenever I read the book, I always imagined like that they're like standing like feet away from the battle when this happens. But the more I thought about it, the more impossible that seemed, especially the way that Huor talks to Turin. Like he's not shouting over the sound of battle, saying all that. He's not. Like this is a they're not fighting right at the second.
And I think that the time lapse between saying goodbye to Turgon and their eventual deaths is also almost certainly much longer than
the book would lead you to.
Then a casual reading of the book might suggest, because of course it's, the whole thing
next
is
paragraph.
Yeah, exactly. 2 paragraphs long, right? So it gives you the impression of it happening swiftly. But the whole idea of being a rear guard which stops the enemy and allows an army of 10,000 minus some to escape. I mean, and they've got a long ways to travel yet. Like it's going to take them days to get to Gondolin from where they are. So, they can't just delay them for 45 minutes, and then they won't catch them. Right. I mean, it was likely days that the men of Dorloman held out. I would think.
Right. I mean, obviously the only description we get is that they gave way and then stopped giving way. So we know that it was we'll fight and give back, fight, give back, fight, give back, until it's like, and this is where we make our final stand.
Fortunately, we had the foresight seasons ago to create this defensible position at this point.
Yes.
To fight over again.
Like I said, if you could just stay out of the fens of Sarek.
You'll do much better if you just stay out of the fens of Sarek. Yeah.
Like the last successful thing that happened in the fens of Sarek was like Calgarm's charge back
in the Dagor Aglareb?
No.
Oh, no.
In the first, the second
in the battle under the stars.
Right.
The second battle.
The second battle under stars.
Yeah. Like that's the last time it was a
That's
good
right.
idea.
Things went badly here, even in the Dagor Aglareb.
Yes.
Right. It was like the only place where things went badly in the Dagor Aglareb.
They could have gone much better. We can say.
Yes.
Yeah. But regardless, no, I do think that the delay between the farewell to Turgon and then the final scene allows you to kind of like wait around for the inevitable with these guys. And the ending of it suggests that Hurin dies, which is of course what everybody expected would happen, including Hurin. Like, he's sitting in there thinking like, okay, my brother and I, we're going to stand here and fight to the death.
I don't know how many hands have to be holding on to you. How many disembodied hands need to be holding on to you before you realize, I don't think they're trying to kill me.
Right. Yeah. No, so I was kind of expecting that the final shot would be Morgoth, right? Or like Morgoth's voice right? But I kind of liked not getting that, actually.
Yeah.
I kind of liked instead the final note that we got was Hurin waking up and simply being surprised that he's waking up, right? Thinking that he was dead. And with the immediate juxtaposition that you did at the very end there of the news of their deaths coming back to Rian and Morwen in Dorloman, and then juxtaposing that with Hurin waking, it's like there's some real ambiguity there, right? Is that a hopeful ending? Right. So Hurin thinks he's dead, but wait, Hurin's not dead. So hope is not gone. Right. Which, if you haven't read the Silmarillion, you might not realize that means it's just going to be far, far, far worse than it was if he had died. But yeah, I mean, it kind of seems potentially, at least, like a hopeful ending.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, actually that fake out is much better than, hearing the voice of Morgoth in the closing moments of the season, which again is kind of what I was anticipating might happen there at the end.
Yeah, we've kept Morgoth out of this entire season, so we have a lot to reveal with him.
Yes,
which requires more than just a little bit at the end here. Like and obviously he and Hern are going to have plenty of time to chat next season.
Hurin, like. With Hurin, we have the opportunity to have the longest patch of dialogue with Morgoth we've had in ever, or at least some time since season 1, maybe.
Which is why it would be easy for the audience to have forgotten what Morgoth is, like what he can do and on what level he is operating. If he's just a villain who lives in a castle and sends out orcs to kill you, that's one thing, and that's kind of what Hurin thought he was fighting.
Well, yeah, it's what he's been since, before the Dagor Bragalok.
So Hurin can be forgiven for thinking that was what he was fighting.
Yeah,
but if Morgoth has the chance to explain himself a bit and to explain that it's not that he's trying to like kill an army, that he's trying to control the matter of Arda. It's like, oh, that's different.
Right.
And I don't think we've had the opportunity to really show that.
Yeah.
Except for glimpses here and there, like with Ethelos and things like that. We've shown a few times when Morgoth just does something and you're like, oh, right, he can do things.
He can do things.
But we haven't heard him talk about it. We haven't heard what he's up to.
Yeah.
So I think that's a whole new thing to get into.
Yeah, agreed. So the one issue I had with the Fens of Serech, but I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to do it differently. Was it felt quick? And it wasn't just that Hurin only cried out Aure Entuluva 3 times instead of 70. I was figuring you would cut some of the 70 times. He wouldn't actually say it 70 times on camera, but but it felt quick. It felt like the rear guard of the men of Dorloman was like fairly brief. Maybe it's because I was reading faster at that point, but it felt quick. And like I said, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make it feel longer without making it excruciatingly, like, I don't know what, dull, but.
So you don't want to do cuts with captions, telling you how much
4
time's
hours
gone
later,
by.
12 hours more later, Yes,
well, one of the things that, because it's in the text of the action description that that they have wounded and dead already, like they've been here for a while. And so that may not come across as clear in text as it does visually. The fight scenes can take as long as we want them to. Right. And
so here's one kind of benchmark, right? Boromir's fight against the Uruk-hai is supposed to like be a dim reminder of Hurin's stand here, right? It's like Boromir's stand is very impressive, but it's like the minor league version of what Hurin accomplishes. And so, yeah, just to make sure that Hurin's final stand feels like the major league version of Boromir's stand.
Yeah, for sure.
It has to be, multiple times that impressive.
So yeah, it's again a league above Helm Hammerhand going out before the Hornberg as well. Like, there's.
Yeah. So what we've got to do is sit down with our stunt coordinator, right? And be like, look, I want you to take the fight that's in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movie between Boromir and the orcs there, and it needs to be like 4 times longer than that.
Yeah. Yeah, easily. I want Hurin like, standing on a mound of bodies by the end, right?
Standing on a mound of bodies or covered in a mound of bodies?
Both.
This is a discussion that came up.
Yeah.
It was.
So the other question is that, yes, obviously we're coming back to them, in media res, this stand and this, fight, fall back stand has been going on for some time. Do we need to see other people falling in battle before Hurin's final moment? Because some of those people who are already dead, one of them is a named character,
right?
Their cousin Geller, who we've followed through the season, and I thought it might be powerful to have had the last time we saw him perfectly hale, alive in the battle, and then we see a dead body that we recognize, and like with no context of where that came from. I thought that would be a powerful thing.
I agree.
But if seeing him fall is more powerful, then like we could have space to kill Geller and then Huor and then her, and that would definitely make the sequence longer.
Making sure, so like basically the three things this scene must accomplish, right? One is it must impress upon the viewers, right, the monumental sacrifice and stubbornness of the men of Dorloman fighting to the last. So not just so that means it's not enough for them to merely be overwhelmed, right? They have to be fighting successfully to the death, right? In sort of quasi King Leonidas sort of style, right? Under different circumstances, obviously, and in a less defensible position. So that's one thing, right? None of the men of Dorloman like retreat, and none of them survive, and all of them stay and fight. So that's one thing. The second thing is we have to accomplish the fact that they accomplished something, right? That not only had it not been for their deaths, but had it not been for the ridiculous stubbornness of their deaths and length of their fight, then that's the only reason why the Gondolindrum escaped, right? And that's established in dialogue. Like, it's clear that Turgon understands what's happening and is really appreciative of it. Like, it's not like that isn't accomplished, right? But again, but we have to feel it, right? We have to feel
right.
Not just the tragedy, but the accomplishment.
We do have the moment afterwards of the Gondolindrum returning to Gondolin, and we see Rogren seeing Gondolin for the first time. So, like, we do get the payoff after Hurin falls up. Look, they made it.
They made it.
Gondolin. So we do see that.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing that you want the Last Stand to feel like it's accomplishing that the whole time.
Yeah, sorta. Yeah. And then of course,
would it?
Go ahead.
Would it help if there was a narrow place they retreated back to, and then they did their final stand, where it was obvious that, like, I don't know, there's hills or something, so that the the orcs can't get through them in a way. I mean, like, because I know there's these defenses, but if it's just like scattered bodies on the defenses and it looks like they could come any which way, like, do we need a narrow spot that they're standing in, or like, would that help?
I was a little bit surprised that they didn't retreat at all, like that we didn't get the
well, if they retreat down into the fens, that's worse.
You'd think.
Well, but I mean, you retreat back to a final point, and that's
Right.
the final stand. So the question is, do we see them fall back to the place they take the final stand?
And where would that even be?
That
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
yeah,
behind them is just swamp.
the fens. Yes. Yeah. But anyway, like I said, I warned at the beginning that I didn't have a good solution to my problem. The third thing that I think that the Fens of Sarek needs to accomplish is Tolkien calls Hurin the greatest mortal warrior, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the strongest of all, the most mighty of all the warriors of men.
That's why he gets a few troll kills in the space of one scene.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the place where he has to, like, we need to emerge from this being like, man, Hurin was the greatest warrior ever. And so, yeah, again, a lot of that can be done, as you say, with, by the stunt coordinators, right? Like we can sort that out. But again, those are the three things that it feels like the depiction of the Fens of Sarek have to accomplish. Remember also that wonderful moment in the text where, the elves remember the death of the men of Dorloman in the Fens of Sarek as like balancing out the betrayal of the Easterlings, right? That those two things are balanced in their assessment of humans, right? And again, Turgon was grateful, right? Like again, and as I say, I loved that whole dialogue with them. I thought that was really excellent.
Right. So you liked the setup.
I like the setup. The scene felt brief, and this is and because of its brevity, which again, though, Nick, again, as you say, like, what do you want to describe blow for blow, like exactly everything? I mean, yeah.
I mean, I've done that. I did that with Fingolfin.
With Fingolfin, sure. Exactly. But this, I mean, you're not going to describe blow for blow him killing all 70, like trolls that he kills or whatever. But yeah, like his having this sense of that what they're doing as a people is totally exceptional, right? Like is above and beyond even what anybody else, even like Fingon himself on the battlefield, like what the men of Dorloman do, is a greater sacrifice, a greater level of dedication. And again, commensurate with and balancing out the betrayal of Uldor.
Well, Fingon didn't sacrifice all his guys. He specifically sent Rogren with Turgon and was like, all right, I'm going to stand here and fight Balrogs, and my immediate guys are going to stand with me and fight Balrogs because it would, be more effective if I don't do this by myself. But he saves a portion.
Right. And
Hurin doesn't. Hurin sends one guy off the battlefield. And I'm sure you noticed his name.
By the way, I saw his name in the Dramatis Personae at the beginning, and I'm like, I've got a bad feeling about that guy. Like, I think I know what his role's going to be.
Yeah. You think exactly what he's going to do. Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Because it was like, we need a guy who does the thing that Otar does. And it's like, you know what? Just call him Otar.
Call him Otar. Yeah. The one thing that the one thing I was a little surprised by, especially because he was named Mokhtar, I'm like, surely he's going to take Narsil out of the battle. Right? Like that's gonna be how Narsil is not lost. But no, I think I can tell there's a different plan here.
Well, we'll have to come up with a plan. Yes, indeed.
It's okay. We'll just have somebody plunder other plunderers, and we can make it work. But that's been done before. Important magic swords of high lineage showing up in a random place is
some woman's hand will like reach out of the fens of Sarek, and
also a possibility. Also a possibility. I hadn't thought of that angle, but certainly there's precedent in that sense too. Oh man, that would be hilarious. No, I'm going to resist the temptation.
Speaking of hilarious.
Yeah.
You might notice that Hurin is wearing significantly fewer hands by the time that he's brought down than he does in the book.
Uh-huh.
And I really thought a lot about this, but the reality is, if he's holding a troll axe, even if it's a one-handed axe for a troll, it's a two-handed axe for him. There's no way he can physically like maneuver off the at the wrist someone's hand that close to his body.
Right.
That is not a thing that can happen.
Yes. Agreed.
It's a nice idea. I get it. And I'm not sure hands work that way when you cut them off. But so I gave at least a couple of nods to the hands.
Yeah.
But I couldn't bring myself to actually like have him decorated with hands.
I was totally satisfied with the arms being cut off. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Besides, again, Mary cutting off the hands of the Uruk High being the junior minor league version of Hurin cutting off the hands of the orcs that are trying to take him. That being the case, Hurin hewing off their entire arms felt totally appropriate in that way. So,
and quite honestly, I mean, I'm Mary's got to have some guns on him, man, to be able to
hack through a
wrist. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could go above the wrist.
That's worse.
It's worse, and then you're cutting through the bones.
At least when you cut through the wrist, you're cutting through a joint.
Right. Yeah.
Well, just if you break the bone.
You can break the bone, but it's to do it in one hack is a
I didn't mean like
hacking.
Actually like cleanly take it off. I just meant like if you just hit it hard enough and it's now floppy.
It is also, of course, possible that the Pippin POV narrator at that point, like Pippin's memory, is possibly slightly exaggerated in that point. I could imagine Pippin perhaps embellishing when he tells this story to Frodo and Bilbo later on. But
this is fair.
As David Pirtle points out, Mary does have a magic sword, so we can't absolutely rule out some of those spells of power that we know to be bound onto Mary's sword. So
that's true.
This is true.
It's possible that, in addition to the, unknit undead sinews spell that is cast upon it, there's also a dismember orcs spell upon it also. So, you can't tell.
If you have a dismember orc spell, why wouldn't you put it on your sword?
Yes, exactly. That's just where you would want it, isn't it? Yes, agreed. Anyway, like I said, I'm not sure exactly how I would want to accomplish these three things more pronouncedly, right? Other than just dragging out that last scene so long that it's going to impinge on other things that were happening in the episode.
Cyclops of Krakoa has a suggestion of it being a montage of Hurin hacking at orcs intercut with the tag scenes, which I think you could get away with the first three of them for sure.
It is an interesting suggestion to
Yeah.
have basically the sort of end of the episode be with Hurin still fighting and shouting Aure Entuluva,
but
right?
then not coming back to Hurin after having Turin fall before we cut to Rogren,
Right.
and then you have the scene in Dorloman, and then we come back to Hurin. I think that's
That could work.
Yeah.
that would work.
That does leave only about 30 seconds for the audience to think that Hurin might have died,
Mhm.
which
Yeah,
is fine. Like, obviously, we're not
That's
leaving the episode with them
preferable.
thinking. Well,
Yeah.
no, I mean, if you end the episode and we're like, is he dead? And we have to wait until next season to find out, that is one thing. Yeah, I know. And it's also the type of thing that it makes the audience go like, wait, did he die or not? And it's just a weird feeling. When someone falls and you're like, oh, I think he might be dead, you want them to at least have the feeling for more than 3 seconds before the guy pops up again, right? Like, you want them to be able to feel.
They have to at
that
least
there was a
process
death.
that feeling before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I realized that cutting to Rion crying and Morwen finding out the news
seems to imply that he's dead and pushes you in
right.
that
So
direction. Yeah.
so like, if we have 2 scenes of, look, he accomplished the Gondolin thing happening, and we're seeing his wife and kid mourning him, we're like, oh wait, he might really be dead. And then we realize, okay, he's still alive.
Yeah.
So it's as tight as you can get it.
Yeah.
And like,
That's
this
fair.
still is enough for the audience to feel
I think it might
in
be
some
worth
way.
it might be worth trying that. I think that would be a really interesting, rather than just making that scene extra long, basically.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah,
more effective than
because what you weren't wanting was it for it to be longer, it was for it to be more impactful.
that. Yeah.
Right.
And in the
And-
particular directions that we need it to be impactful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, how do you show a last stand?
Yeah.
It's you show a group getting overrun and everybody dying.
Yeah.
That's what last stands look like.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I
But-
was going to say before, a reason to keep Gellir alive would be if we wanted to have, so one downside to having only Huor and Hurin as our last named characters alive of the Men of Dorloman. On the one hand, the poignant, goodbyes and the links between the two of them is lovely. Like, that's enough in one sense. But if Gellir were there also, that would help to emphasize the holistic Men of Dorloman sacrifice thing, right? He would then be the voice of the other non-sons of Galdor Men of Dorloman who are also choosing to sacrifice them, to stay there until they die and sacrifice themselves, rather than just, the sons of Galdor and a bunch of red shirts. You know what I mean? Like, so it might be a way to emphasize the Men of Dorloman aren't just being defeated. They are choosing, all of them are choosing to stay until
Right.
they die.
That it's not just Hurin and Huor and their buddy, this elven king that nobody else knows or cares about.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I do see that Geller's point of view as the everyman Dorloman
Right.
guy
Right.
would help. I mean, he's their cousin, but still,
Right,
it would.
right.
It might help with.
No, but that's right.
Yeah.
His role would be the
Yeah.
everyman. Like, yeah.
He never went to Gondolin.
Yep.
Yes.
That's what I mean by everyman. He is a person of Dorloman who stands for Dorloman, and is not caught up in this Elven King of Gondolin thing,
Yes.
and still is like, and here we stand.
And here we stand. Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, Huor's line about, dying to, bring hope and like no one could ask for a better end. I loved that line. That line. Yeah. That was yeah. Alana, who's on YouTube tonight because she's having trouble with Twitch, was saying that she was just typing the same thing, Marie. And it was just like, yes, what Marie said. She was pointing out about the interlace thing with the tags at the end. She was saying that, we know that when Oktar leaves, so he doesn't have we know that he doesn't have all the information, right? So there's still some kind of dramatic irony going on there that, again, people can be kind of thinking and processing, but yeah.
But yeah, I think that cutting away is how we add significance to it. So I think that is a good plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's no real way to show everyone being like united with a single purpose.
Right.
So if we want Geller to still be alive to be part of the conversation in the farewell.
Right.
Thing,
and by the way, we could even
do we care what order he dies in? Because he's gonna die too. Like if he's still alive there, we need to show his death.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of thinking we could do at least a little version of what you were already doing. That is, we have to show who are dying, obviously. So we show who are dying, and then we cut away to do another thing, and we cut back. And we could cut one of the times we cut back. Hurin could still be fighting, and Geller could be dead, like next, at his feet or nearby.
So the sudden dead Geller,
could still happen. Yeah.
But in one of the cuts, not in the earlier part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that, because we don't need to invent like a death mechanism, for everybody separately.
With the number of deaths in this episode, you do want them to be differentiated,
right? Without getting as creative as like Homer or South Park or whatever.
But yeah, like I figured somebody basically dying off screen and you just see them dead.
Yeah,
would be good. And why not Geller?
Why not Geller? Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that could work. I think that could work.
Yeah, and I forget. Do we see Boar's son die on screen, Nick?
The one who's driving his chariot, he's thrown from the chariot.
Right, but we never see what happens to him after that, do we?
One of them, the one who died in this episode, like the last we heard, he was still like, oh, he's still alive, but he's like, or he's still breathing, but then he died afterwards. So
I think I probably meant to. Oh gosh.
I think he was only mostly dead when last.
That was a late edit to the to add him back in because I'd forgotten about him. So I probably had meant to go back and add that.
The one in episode 12 died very definitively.
Yes. I know we killed one son for sure.
Add that like Boar looks over as he's falling. As he's falling, he looks over and he can see that that Boar lad is he's just laying there dead.
Yeah,
eyes wide open. Yeah.
Okay, so because I wasn't sure if it was one of those things where he was injured, dying, and then just got lost in the battle. But
I just lost him in my brain.
No worries. So I think
Geller.
So I do think Geller is the character then to show already
dead. Yeah. No, that would work, and that combines that, especially if we combine. So I kind of like having Geller dying after Huor in this way because then we can combine like that. The corpse of Geller is basically the indicator that and now only Hurin remains, and there is Hurin alone. So the corpse of Geller is representative of, he's still the everyman. He's representing visually all the men of Dorloman who have died and only Hurin remains, basically. So.
Okay. Yeah. So we would start interlacing probably after Hurin gets the troll axe then. So Huor dies.
Yeah, have
then
him
there's
take
the
up
interaction
the
with the
axe.
troll.
Yeah.
And once he gets the axe, that's when we start cutting it. Okay.
Yeah. That makes sense.
All right.
That makes sense.
Okay.
It can also get progressively darker in that scene.
As he's yelling, "Days shall come again." I think.
Yeah, because it's deliberately in the evening.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the tag scene, we get Gondolin in sunlight, of course.
Yeah.
So the day shall come again is immediately on screen then.
Right.
Clearly time has passed.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and yeah, no, that's good in lots of ways. Cool. Awesome. Very good. Well, that was great fun, and I find myself wanting to immediately be like, it, you know, I'm trying to restrain myself from immediately thinking about episode 1 of season 8 and where we need to go from here. But we're not talking about that. That is not what's happening.
No.
Not at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Not at 1 o'clock in the morning. So next time, on Thursday the 28th, we are going to talk about the frame.
Yes.
All right.
So we're talking about the frame. Dave always loves the frame. We're going to talk about the frame, and which I'd almost forgotten what the frame was, but the frame is the White Council.
Yes.
Right. Yes, the frame is the White Council. So, okay. And we still have an opportunity if people want to submit artwork for props, sets, costumes. Any thoughts that people have that they would like to supply, we could still do an episode on artwork for that. We're at the very least, we're going to do one more episode on the frame and then one more episode on the music. If we get enough art, we'll do an art episode too. If not, no big deal. We'll just do those two. But it looks like probably we're going to be done by Mythmoot, I think. So that we can finish season 7 by Mythmoot. This is like is going to be like the Mythmoot of closure. I'm like ending a Mythgard Academy book, and we're ending season 7 of like SilmFilm. We're completing both of those things right before Mythmoot this year.
Well, it's funny. An entire cycle of Mythmoots happened between us having the episode 13 script of season 6 and the episode 1 script of season 7 ready to go.
Right.
And now we managed to finish the whole season since then.
Yeah, there we go. Because we had just done episode 1 last year.
We finished episode 1 essentially just in time.
Just in time for
it would be okay to do that.
It was Alana's script in Gondolin that we presented at Mythmoot last year.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Which
with
was
the first ever
episode 1 of the season.
Episode 1 of the season, right? With our first ever, stunt.
SilmFilm stunt, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going to do this one.
We're not going to do episode 13.
No.
No. Oh, I think that would be bad.
One day at Ranger Moot.
One day at Ranger Moot, we'll do a full reenactment. Yeah. Actually, that would be a little bit fun. Come to think of it,
to like just get like a few groups of people just to stand in for the different.
Yeah. To sort of show how the battle of unnumbered tears could happen. That's cool. Yeah. So as Alana says, we're beginning and ending with Gondolin here in season 7. No, that's excellent. Okay, so that's the plan. That is what is going to be. So Thursday, May 28th, we will discuss the frame, and then in June we will do either art and music or just music, one or the other. All right. Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining me, for all of your work, Nick. Wonderful work on this episode. It was delightful. The tears were abundant. So that was, well, I was going to say, I hope that this will be like the saddest season that we do, but I'm not really sure. I think the end of Turin is going to be worse.
Do you realize, the next 2 seasons is Turin bar.
I think.
And we are eventually going to do the Akalabath.
True.
Yeah. That's a different level of sadness.
It is.
Where he doesn't believe in the second age, though. So it's
not for this project. Look, we just finished season 7 out of what, 12?
Out of 12
of the first stage.
Look, the first half of the first stage only took us 1 decade. So
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
No problem.
All right, Nick, can you start working on figuring out how to do how to retcon some stuff so we can do the Borg Galadriel spinoff?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, all he has to do is not die,
All he has to do is not die.
or they just have a bunch of adventures in his
Yeah.
mind before
Yes.
he dies.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's gonna have to be it. Alternate reality.
Exactly. This the entire spin-off series is a Farian drama.
Farian drama.
Yes, exactly.
In Galadriel's
And then at the
visit to
end-
Bor's mind.
Or actually die.
At the end, Bor dies. Yeah, exactly.
We just replay
right.
the scene again.
Right. He's been there the whole time. In fact, yeah.
Oh,
It's perfect.
man.
It's like the
No.
Bob Newhart show.
It's perfect. All right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And I will say, as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.